Today's lesson is The Duplicity of Hargreaves. Hi, everyone. I'm Mike.
And I'm Candice.
And we're back with Hargreaves. That's Henry Hargreaves to you and me. He's an aspiring young actor in sort of late 19th century Washington, D.C. in America, we can imagine. He's been staying at a boarding house in Washington, probably while he prepares for an acting role at a local theater or something. And at that boarding house, he happened to meet a very interesting old Southern gentleman named Major Talbot, who's staying there with his daughter. And this Major was particularly interesting to young actor Hargreaves, wasn't he?
Yes, he was interesting because he was obviously a very interesting character study coming from the South. Mm-hmm. He had an interesting way of talking, and he had a lot of old stories. Since Henry Hargreaves was an aspiring actor, he saw him as a perfect person to model a character on.
So things were going fairly well. Hargreaves was learning a lot from the Major. The Major was enjoying sharing his old stories with this young man, as old folks often do when a young person is interested in hearing about their past. But the money situation for the Major and his daughter wasn't improving. They ran out of money. They were probably going to have to move or maybe even sleep on the streets. And the Major had actually spent his last $2 instead of spending it on food or another night to stay in the boarding house. He spent it on theater tickets. Tickets to a Henry Hargreaves performance? We don't know, so we're going to have to find out by reading the first part of today's article.
With the money already spent, Lydia and the Major decided to attend the play, a war drama about the South. To their surprise, Henry Hargreaves took the stage as Colonel Calhoun, dressed exactly like the Major. His manner and accent were identical to those of the old man, and he even told stories straight from the Major's book. The audience went wild, but the Major wasn't laughing.
大家好，第一部分我们看到名词 accent， 指腔调或是口音。举例来说 After living in London for a few years, Kathy started speaking with an English accent.Kathy 在伦敦住了几年后，说话就开始带有英国腔。或是 I know by her strange accent that she wasn't from around here. 我从她奇怪的口音中得知她不是这里的人。
It says, with the money already spent, Lydia and the Major decided to attend the play, a war drama about the South. So it was something that they could identify with, both of them being from the South, and they would probably be interested to see how the characters from the South are portrayed.
That's exactly right. And that sentence structure is kind of showing us there was a relationship here. It's a little bit different than how we might say that sentence otherwise. But yeah, we might say it like this or read it like this. With rain pouring down, we decided to cancel our picnic. All right. It's kind of like changing it around and using because. Because of the rain pouring down, we canceled our picnic, or we canceled our picnic because the rain was pouring down. So this is basically saying there's a connection between these things, an A and a B, a cause and effect, but we're phrasing it and writing it in a slightly different way. So they decided to go to this play. To their surprise, it says, Henry Hargreaves took the stage as Colonel Calhoun, dressed exactly like the Major. Okay, so the character's name is different. It's not Major Talbot, it's Colonel Calhoun in the play. But apparently Henry Hargreaves is basically playing the Major. He's dressed exactly like the Major. That's how he took the stage. When you take the stage, you basically go on stage, you walk on stage. The singer took the stage after the band had played some music for 5 minutes. That's when they appeared on the stage, when they walked out from the wings into the lights of the stage. So there he is, and they look up and, well, his name's Calhoun, but the Major and his daughter in the audience are like, hey, that's me. He's basically playing me. And it wasn't just the physical appearance that was similar.
Yes, it was probably also his accent and his way of moving, his manner. So it goes on to say that his manner and accent were identical to those of the old man, and he even told stories straight from the Major's book.
Oh my gosh.
So what he was doing, he was mimicking the Major. So even though the rank of the character was different and the name was different, it was essentially the life of Major Talbot that was playing out on stage. And what he did was he mimicked his physical mannerisms. So maybe he held his head in a specific way, or he picked things up in a specific way. That is his manner. And his accent. Accent is the way that you talk. So that could be your tone, your pitch, the way you pronounce certain words. So, of course, people from different parts of a country can have different accents, or people from different countries speaking the same language can have different accents. And, of course, if you're from the north of America, your accent is different to someone from the south of America. But Henry Hargraves was mimicking Major Talbot's accent, the way he talked.
Interesting. Maybe making fun of him, but certainly being very, very similar. And it went even more than that, in a way, more damaging to Major Talbot than that, because Hargraves, as Calhoun in this play, was telling stories straight from the Major's book. He was actually stealing some of his own personal history, some of his own personal stories, or anecdotes, we might call those, and telling them to this audience. So you would think that if the Major ever wanted to publish his book, people who read the book would say, hey, I heard an actor tell this story. You're copying him. When actually it was the actor copying the Major, but no one knew that. The audience, though, loved it. It says the audience went wild, but the Major wasn't laughing. So the audience was really having a good time laughing at the accent, enjoying the stories, really captivated and taken with Hargraves' performance as Calhoun, but it's really Hargraves' performance as Major Talbot, but nobody knows that, and the Major wasn't happy. That's why he obviously wasn't laughing. We'll find out more what happens in this kind of interesting story now after we hear the second paragraph from today's episode.
The next day, Hargraves visited the Major and showed him the fantastic review of his performance in the newspaper, but the reception he got was cold. Hargraves said he didn't mean to offend and wanted to offer him a small loan as thanks, but the Major refused it and ordered him to leave.
第二部分我们看到单字 fantastic， 这个字是形容词，表示极好的或是了不起的、幻想的，像是 The cottage has a fantastic view of the river， 这栋小木屋有极好的河流景观，或者 Everyone says the movie is fantastic, so I will go to see it。 每个人都说这部电影很好看，所以我会去看。接着我们看到名词 reception， 表示反应、对待或是接待、欢迎。例如 Audience reception of the singer's new album was excellent。 观众对这位歌手的新专辑反应非常好。也可以说 Unfortunately, Alfred did not get the warm reception that he had expected。 不幸的是 Alfred 并没有得到他预期的热情接待。另外补充这个字的相关名词 receptionist， R-E-C-E-P-T-I-O-N-I-S-T receptionist 指接待员，像是 Speak to the receptionist if you would like to make an appointment with Dr. Jones。 如果您想与 Jones 博士预约，请与接待员联系。或是 If you have any questions about accommodation, please contact the receptionist。 如果你有任何住宿相关问题，麻烦与接待员联系。接着我们看到单字 offend， 这个字是动词，它的意思是冒犯或是得罪。举例来说 Personally, I was offended by Trent's joke。 在我看来 Trent 的玩笑话冒犯到我了。也可以说 The rude conversation offended Bettina, who is very sensitive。 那场粗鲁的对话得罪到了很敏感的 Bettina。 另外补充这个字的形容词 offensive， O-F-F-E-N-S-I-V-E offensive， 指冒犯的、无理的或是令人反感的。例如 That word is offensive to many people。 那个用字对很多人来说是冒犯的。或者 A lot of people found the comedy show to be offensive。 很多人觉得那个喜剧让人反感。
Okay, we're back. So, Major Talbot had a bad night at the theater. He went there with his daughter expecting to be entertained, but it turns out that actor was basically playing Major Talbot on stage. The audience was loving it, but the original Major didn't feel he was getting credit for all of the stories that the actor had stolen from him, along with his appearance, his manner, and his accent.
Yeah, and of course, Henry Hargreaves was a good actor. He was able to represent his manner and accent in an identical way, and the audience went wild. But of course, the Major didn't think this was funny because, as you say, Hargreaves had stolen from the Major.
Yes, exactly right. And so then we read the next day Hargreaves visited the Major and showed him the fantastic review of his performance in the newspaper. But the reception he got was cold. Okay, so this is, I guess, back at the boarding house. They come down in the morning for breakfast. Hargreaves is there, and then he visits with the Major. So he goes over to spend some time with the Major, maybe actually in the afternoon, like when that time they used to sit around and tell stories and stuff. He was excited, Hargreaves, this actor. He showed the Major the fantastic review of his performance in the newspaper. He got in the newspaper that day. A critic from the newspaper had seen this play and written wonderful things about this talented young actor, Henry Hargreaves, who played this Colonel Calhoun, a Southern character. And oh, he was so good, and his stories were so realistic, and his performance was so natural, and everyone thought he was fantastic. It was great. They were saying great things about Hargreaves in the newspaper, but when he showed it to the Major, and obviously he was very proud to show it to the Major didn't give him a good reaction. The reception he got was cold. A reception is basically when you receive something, when someone gives something to you, when you take it, that is the reception of that thing. In this case, it's the reception of a story or news. The reception he got was cold. If you come to someone's house and they're like, yeah, come in. Yeah, sit down. No, you can't have any water. Someone, oh, why am I getting such a cold reception? A warm reception would be like, oh, it's wonderful to see you. Come in. Yeah, sit anywhere. Can I get you something? Food, drink, anything you need? That's a warm reception. The way I'm greeting you, the way I'm receiving you, the way I'm welcoming you is very warm. If it's cold, I'm not really happy to see you. I don't like you. I'm upset about something, and it has to do with you, clearly.
Yes, I'm quite surprised that Hargreaves expected a warm reception after what he had done.
Or maybe he didn't know the Major was in the audience that night.
Possibly. That might have been the reason. However, I'm surprised that he expected to receive a warm reception because he must have lacked quite a lot of self-awareness, or maybe he just didn't think he had done anything wrong.
I guess.
And then Hargreaves said he didn't mean to offend and wanted to offer him a small loan as thanks. But the Major refused it and ordered him to leave. So what Hargreaves is doing is almost adding insult to injury, because at first he was expressing interest in the Major's stories, genuine interest, or what the Major thought was genuine interest, but it wasn't really genuine interest. It was self-serving interest. All that Hargreaves was really interested in was to be able to develop a character for his new stage production. And then, of course, he took a lot of stories from the Major's memoirs and presented them as his own. And of course, we should never do that. That is quite frowned upon, not only on the stage, but if you're writing a paper, if you're writing some homework and you take someone else's ideas and present them as your own, that is considered cheating. But Hargreaves said he didn't mean to offend. Offend, of course, is he didn't mean to cause any kind of anger or to hurt the Major's feelings. However, I find that hard to believe. And then in the same breath, he said, oh, I want to offer you some money as thanks. And of course, the Major is a proud man. He obviously did not want to accept any money. A loan is an amount of money that you have to repay, of course, but it will help you out in the meantime. Of course, the Major was reluctant to take anything from Hargreaves at that point because he did feel that Hargreaves had deeply offended him.
All right, so we're going to take a break here and then we'll be back to find out more and to find out how this story all wraps up. You won't want to miss that.
Days later, a man named Mose arrived. He claimed to be a former slave of the Major's father who had given him the means to start a successful business after he'd been freed. Now he wanted to pay back the favor. The Major remembered Mose and accepted the money with gratitude. A week later, Lydia received a letter from Hargreaves asking, "How was I as Mose?" She was sure to hide it from her father.
最后第三部分，我们看到名词 gratitude， 表示感激或是感恩之情，像是 Simon expressed his gratitude to Monica by taking her out to dinner. Simon 带 Monica 出去吃晚餐，以表达感激。或是 We all expressed our gratitude for his kindness and hospitality. 对于他的亲切和殷勤款待，我们都表达了感恩之情。另外补充这个字的形容词 grateful。Grateful, grateful, 指感激的或是感谢的。例如 Molly was grateful for all of the birthday cards that she received. 收到这么多生日贺卡， Molly 觉得很感激。也可以说 Sonia is grateful to everyone who has supported her over the years. Sonia 感谢多年来一直支持她的每个人。
Okay, so there we go. Hargreaves has deeply offended the very proud Major Talbot. Hargreaves tried to make things better by offering some money, but the Major refused it and ordered Hargreaves to leave, despite the fact that the Major and his daughter really do need the money. They're struggling to pay for even a place to stay, but the Major's pride won't let him accept Hargreaves' money for what he thinks Hargreaves has done to offend him. So what happens? It says days later, a man named Mose arrived. Okay, who's this Mose character? He claimed to be a former slave of the Major's father, who had given him the means to start a successful business after he'd been freed. Okay, so this is someone from long ago in Major Talbot's past. When he was a young man, his father was still alive. Remember, Major Talbot came from a family that owned a plantation, a farm in the southern U.S., and on those farms, they had slaves. They employed slaves or owned slaves to do the work of picking the cotton, picking the tobacco, and the crops that they grew there. And at different times, and maybe during the war or after the Civil War, Talbot's father had freed one of his slaves, one of his workers. He'd given him his freedom, allowed him to leave the plantation and go off, probably move to the north to live as a free man. And so this man was very grateful for that. And in fact, this man Mose had come back, had found the Major. I guess he'd found out that Major Talbot's father, the man who'd freed him, had died, but Mose had done well with himself after he'd been made a free man, and so he wanted to sort of pay back the family who had done this nice thing for him.
So, yeah, Mose came back and said he wanted to pay back the favor. He wanted to return the favor. He wanted to do something to help now that he was a successful businessman. And the Major remembered Mose and accepted the money with gratitude. So the Major may not have recognized Mose, but he remembered the name Mose. And he accepted the money from Mose because he felt that that was a genuine offer of assistance. It wasn't predicated on anything else. It was given to him because his father had done something good for Mose. So he accepted the money with gratitude. He was grateful to receive the money. He was thankful. So when we say with gratitude, it means that you willingly accept, you're happy to accept, you're very thankful.
All right, so Talbot has got some money now. He wouldn't accept the money from Hargreaves because he felt Hargreaves had insulted him and his pride wouldn't do that. But with this Mose guy, well, his family had done something nice for Mose, and Mose now wanted to return the favor and, give a gift of some money to the Major just as a way of saying thank you. And so I guess the Major's pride allowed him to accept this. We'd done something nice, and so this guy felt he owed us. It would be wrong for us to say, no, we can't accept your money. So the Major did. He accepted the money. That was great, and it helped, obviously, Major Talbot and his daughter with their financial problems, which were quite serious at that time. And then as we reach the end of our story, we read, a week later, Lydia, that's the Major's daughter, a week later, Lydia received a letter from Hargreaves, the actor, asking, how was I as Mose? Oh, so he's such a good actor. He was playing a former slave, and he convinced the major that this was truly who he was, even though it was Hargreaves, the actor. And then it says she was sure to hide it from her father. That is the letter. She doesn't want her father to know that really the money he accepted happily from Mose, this former slave, was actually being given to him by Hargreaves, the actor he was angry with. But Hargreaves, of course, was disguised as Mose. What an amazing actor he is, that Hargreaves.
Yeah, but the duplicity continues.
I guess so. But I guess there's good duplicity and bad duplicity, at least in this story.
Yes.
Very interesting. All right, guys, it's time for us to listen to our Chinese teacher. Then we'll be back with a little question for you.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文一开始写到 With the money already spent, Lydia and the major decided to attend the play, a war drama about the South. 由于钱已经花了，因此 Lydia 和少校决定去看这出戏，一部关于南方的战争剧。那这边要介绍的就是 with 加受词加受词补语。我们刚刚这个 with the money already spent 就是用到这样的句型，那它是用来附带说明主要子句的状况。而受词补语呢，可以是介系词片语、形容词、现在分词 VING 或者是过去分词 PP。如果我们是要用分词来当受词补语的话，你就可以从受词和受词补语之间的关系去做判断。如果是主动关系，我们就用现在分词 VING， 那么被动关系就是用过去分词 PP。 我们就来造两个例句。第一个例句是 It's bad manners to talk with your mouth full。 满嘴食物还说话是不礼貌的。那这时候受词是 your mouth，然后受词补语则是形容词 full， 去描述食物是塞满嘴巴的那种状态嘛。好，再来是第二个例句 With our bags packed, we're ready to hit the road。 我们包包打包好了，准备要出发咯。 Hit the road 就是出发上路哦。好，那由于这个背包是被打包的，所以我们说 With our bags packed， 这个 our bags 受词和受词补语的关系是被动，所以才用过去分词 packed 来当补语。接着我们读到课文的下一句，他说 To their surprise, Henry Hargreaves took the stage... 那文中用到 to their surprise 来表达令他们惊讶的是... 好，那当我们用 to one's 情绪名词，这样是在表达让某人感到的事，令某人的事。那这可以用来修饰整个句子或者是主词，其中这个情绪名词呢是要用单数。好，那我们来看看常见搭配的情绪名词有 disappointment 失望， joy 快乐， shock 震惊， surprise 惊讶， regret 遗憾等等。那么 to 的前面还可以加入副词，像 much 来去强调程度。举例来说 Much to her disappointment, she didn't get her dream job。 令她相当失望的是，她没有得到她的梦想工作。好，那顺便补充，当我们用 in 加上情绪名词，则是表达感到怎么样怎么样，处于什么什么的情绪之中。其中的名词呢，大多是用单数，而且前面不加冠词。像呢，我们可以用 in distress 来表达悲伤地处于悲伤之中。还有呢，像 in anger 愤怒地， in despair 绝望地， in horror 感到害怕， in embarrassment 尴尬地等等。我们在使用 in 加上情绪名词的时候呢，它会具有副词功能，你可以把它摆在句首去修饰整个句子，或者是摆在动词之后来修饰动词。像我们可以说 The fans screamed in excitement， 就是表达粉丝兴奋的尖叫，这样去修饰动词。好，那么以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Accent. The actor's strong accent was ideal for some roles, but not suitable for many others. Fantastic. This cake you baked tastes fantastic, said June. Reception. The people at the party gave the charming poet a warm reception. Offend. Don't offend your guests by failing to offer them something to drink. Loan. When Eve gave Adele the loan, she didn't really expect her to pay it back. Gratitude. Back on land after being lost at sea, the sailor kissed the ground in gratitude for his survival.
Discussion starter starts now!
Okay, we are back with our discussion starter question. In the story, it says Hargreaves' duplicity enables an act of kindness. Can you think of other situations in which tricking someone might be justified? Or do you think duplicity is never acceptable?
Well, I'm going to go for the obvious answer. I think duplicity is never acceptable because it is dishonest and it betrays the trust that someone has in you. In the Major's case, he trusted Hargreaves with his story because he thought that Hargreaves was genuinely interested. But Hargreaves used that story to ridicule his manner, his accent, and all the important events in his life quite publicly.
Interesting. Well, another situation in which tricking someone might be justified is when you're trying to get them to do something that's good for them, but they really don't want to do it. I'm thinking about getting your pets to take medicine or something like that, hiding it in their food or giving them a treat while you also give them the medicine. Maybe in that case it might be okay. But you're right. Generally, honesty is always the best policy. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Mike.
I'm Candice.
See you next time.